Welcome to episode number 44 of the First Responder Wellness Podcast. My name is Conrad Weaver. Thanks so much for joining us today. So today's episode is the final episode for season 1 of the show. I'm taking a short break from the podcast for the month of July, but I'll be back in August with season 2 of the First Responder Wellness Podcast. And even though this is episode 44 of the podcast, there are about 40 additional episodes, 85 in total, that are on the audio version of the podcast. And there's also a couple of them on YouTube as well. These earlier episodes are from conversations that I've had over the past few years with leaders within the first responder community. It includes interviews with people like Chief Stephen Castevens of the IACP, Chief Gary Ludwig of the International Association of Fire Chiefs, Tom Morris Jr., former co-host of Live PD, and a ton of others. So be sure to scroll back and check out all those amazing interviews that I did over the past few years, and you may just find some that are meaningful for you. But this week, I'm honored to have Brenda Lee on the show. Brenda is a distinguished leadership trainer and renowned as an emotional intelligence expert. In this conversation, we talk about the importance of emotional intelligence and self-care for first responders and high-level achievers. Brenda emphasizes the significance of taking time for oneself and creating a morning routine. She shares a bit of her personal journey and experience with overcoming trauma. Our conversation is deep and personal, and while she's not a first responder, I know you will gain valuable ideas you can put into practice to become a better you. We recorded this interview back in January, and I've been waiting for the right moment to share this conversation, and it seems appropriate that it's the final episode of season 1 because I'm calling this Do It Like It's Your Last Shot. And you'll find out later where that comes from within the show. It's not the last podcast of the show, at least I hope not, but it is our last episode of the season, and it's a good one, so stay tuned. Hey, I hope you enjoy listening or watching this podcast as much as I enjoy producing it. And I'd love to hear your comments or feedback and thoughts on what you're experiencing. My mission is to bring you content that inspires you to develop a culture of wellness for yourself and for your team, because I believe that wellness is not optional. And if you enjoy the show, please subscribe. You don't know how happy that makes me. And when you subscribe, bring someone with you. Let someone else know that what you're listening to and invite them to listen with you. Share the links. Let's get more people listening so that we can have a greater impact on the world around us. Thanks again for being here. And now here's my inspiring conversation with the one and only Brenda Lee. Well, Brenda Lee, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. It's so great to have you on the program today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, honestly.
Yeah, we connected a few months ago with some mutual connections, and it's so excited to have you on. I know that you're not directly a first responder, but I think a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today can affect all of us, but especially first responders and just dealing with the stresses of life and the life in general. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
Yeah. So I own a leadership company called Modig Leadership, and we do leadership development for high-level executives, C-suite executives, their teams, leaders of anywhere. We've worked with anywhere from local companies all the way up to enterprise-size companies that are huge, massive, mergers. In fact, we worked with a company this last summer that was like the merger of the year, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is... what we do in leadership development is something very unique. It's a very cutting edge. And the more, our system's been proven because I didn't step into this as a leadership development coach, right? I started as a divorce resilience coach. One of my clients had asked, he got through my program and he was like, if you took this to my team, it would radically change the way that they behaved in the way that they engaged with each other. Are you willing to give it a go? And I was like, absolutely. So I'm a yes girl. Like I'll try anything once until I'm like, that doesn't work for me, So we rolled our sleeves up. We went in and we did it with his team and we knocked it out of the park and it was fantastic. And so 3.5 years later, we're full tilt boogie. We're ready to scale in a huge way. This year, what we've learned through doing this is that there is a huge, massive gap, particularly in the corporate industry. And what I'm actually finding out, Conrad, in talking with you, talking with local people in the first responder. I am not a first responder at all in any way, shape, or form. but I am in a different sense if you're open-minded enough to consider that trauma is trauma, right? And the trauma that first responders go through, the trauma that I've been through, the trauma that my family's gone through, it's all, I don't want to say it's the same because it's not the same. And I don't really understand what first responders go through. But at the end of the day, the effects of trauma are the same. And the way that we do or don't handle it are the same. And the way that we are equipped or not equipped is unfortunately, whether it's corporate, divorce, first responders, school, parents, all of it across the board, that is unfortunately the same. And there's a gaping hole there that we're finding we get to fill. And it's been really fun.
So what did you learn about yourself going through the stuff that you went through over the past number of years?
Oh, well, how long do we have now? Okay. That's a really loaded question, Conrad. Here's the funny thing. We were just chatting and long and the short of it is I was married to a guy that was highly toxic. And, a lot of people say that, right? But this was like a massive level of trauma that we went through. And for the last 3.5 years, we've been divorced for 16 years, married for 14. Last 3.5 years, he hasn't been involved in the kids' life for reasons of his choosing. He made some really horrible choices that caused him to not be able to see the kids. And he just died this last summer of cancer, this last fall, actually. And it really brought forward this level of PTSD that I didn't realize I had, right? Where for 20 plus years, almost 22 years, I had been dealing with this guy. Now, I will say this too. He was a product of how I was raised, right? I married a combination of the worst of my mother and father, unfortunately, right? And so, and no shame on them, right? It's just, they were doing what they knew. You guys, especially like our era, we're not raised with emotional intelligence is really important, right? People don't teach this. We don't talk to counselors. We don't go do this. If somebody says therapy, it was like this taboo, like, oh, you're batshit. And now you're axed out of the group kind of a deal. And that's changed. Thank God, right? Like COVID really brought mental health awareness to the table. And people can't deny it anymore. And like you and I get this, obviously, the work that you're doing through the PTSD 911, the movie, and all of the things where we can't ignore this anymore. The fallout is too big. It's too catastrophic. And it's causing, our suicide rate is at its highest that it's ever been. And it's devastating to me. And I'm on a mission to share like how important emotional intelligence is, what it is, and why people get to learn this so they can actually be free on the other side of it.
Yeah. Speaking of the suicide rate, I know we've had at least 7 law enforcement suicides already this year.
Oh, Conrad. That just kills me.
It just doesn't stop. And so there is so much work to do in this space to help people understand and how to cope or learn how to deal with the stuff that all of us face in some form or another.
Yes. And I think that this is where there is a commonality with first responders and I, right? Like I said, our trauma is not the same, but like the specific trauma, the catalyst for PTSD, the catalyst for stressors, those aren't the same. But trauma across the board is all the same. I've got a really good friend. She lives in Colorado. We used to say, which now I'm like, why did we say this out loud to each other? Because words matter. But we would call each other suffering friends because we're like, your suffering is different than my suffering, but getting through it doesn't matter. The tools and the skill sets needed are the same. And so this, to circle back to what I was saying of our commonality is the level of stress that I've been under for the last 43 years. I'm 43 years old, right? And in the chaotic household I grew up in, and then just marrying into it and having a fight like hell on my hands to keep my kids protected for the last several years. It's significant, constant, never going away trauma. The way that I've likened that experience, Conrad, is like, I, as a woman, which I don't believe I'm designed to do, right? As a woman, I have been standing as a knight at the front door with all the armor on, the chainmail on, the knife is still dripping with blood, and there could be another fight at any second. And I have never been able to let down. And because I have several first responder friends, my best friend's husband was I just retired out of there. I don't want to say made the mistake, but I dated one once and I was like, wow, you guys really do deal with the bowels of the earth a little bit, right? Like they really do. It's hard. It's hard stuff. So that continual persistent trauma that first responders deal with, that a lot of people don't deal with, and they don't realize it. I did not realize how much stress my physical body was under and my emotions have, despite me teaching this all day, every day, like my whole career is centered around this. the last 3 months when I finally slowed down and let myself heal, I was like, holy shit. I don't even realize, I'll share this story. This was just 4 days ago. I went into, I had a doctor's appointment, of which she's like, your cortisol's through the roof, your adrenal glands are shot. And I'm like, shocking. You know what I mean? Like, we're working on the recovery plan right now of how do we get Brenda's health back into a calm state, lower the cortisol, all the things. And I was hungry and I went to Chick-fil-A. We've got Chick-fil-A here and I love it. And my kids love it too. And as I was sitting there on the main highway that I've been in a wreck on twice, by the way, by other people, which is like, what are the chances? But that's where the first responders come in. You know, like whatever, they're always there for me when I need them. And I'm getting ready to turn into the parking lot. And all of a sudden I feel this guilt. And I was like, what the crap? Why am I feeling guilty for going to Chick-fil-A? And I realized I felt guilty because I was going without my kids. And then come home, fast forward a little bit later, because I'm in a little bit of a sabbatical right now, right? Like I'm sitting out on the back porch. The sun is out. It's a beautiful day. It's like 58 degrees in the middle of January. We're like, what's going on? Whatever, but it's fine. I'm gonna get my vitamin D. My son comes home and first question out of his mouth, he's like, did you go to Chick-fil-A without me today? And I was like, I sure did. And then he said, right? Like, okay. So then he says, hey, I'm going to go up and take the Christmas lights off. It's a nice warm day today. You know, I'm going to go pull those off the house. And I thought I should go help him. And I felt guilty. I didn't get up and go help him. And then I thought, so both of these two experiences, I was like, what is going on for me, right? Like I've got this level of guilt, of shame that I haven't even felt for the last 19 years that I've had children. I have felt this feeling and I can identify it now that I started thinking about it and going back. I was like, every time I do anything without my kids, I feel guilty. I leave for a business trip, but it's at some nice place. I feel guilty. And this is just mom stuff, right? This is every area of my life. I have anxiety that I had no clue existed. I'll be walking and on a phone with somebody and I'm out of breath and I don't realize how tight my chest is because I've got so much anxiety. This is all stuff that I didn't even feel 3 months ago because I was in so much stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to kind of bring that full circle.
What did you do that now you started feeling these things? What was it that process that, oh, wow, now I can feel these things?
Well, first of all, my ex-husband died. So the threat was gone, right? And so this often happens and I've watched this over and over with first responders when they retire, this constant level of cortisol. What happens within our body, we get addicted to it. It hits us, it hits our brain, releases a cascade of hormones faster than what's the drug you shoot up in your arm? I don't even know. Look, heroin. Faster than heroin can hit your bloodstream. Stress releases a cascade of hormones that our body physically becomes addicted to. So when we're in that environment day after day after day after day, I mean, how many times have first responders, myself, anybody who lives in chaos like this, we find ourselves going home, we're exhausted, decision fatigue. What do you want for dinner? I don't care. Okay, do you want to go to Bob's Burgers? No, I don't want Bob's Burgers. Why should we go to Bob's Burgers? Like, I don't want to go to Bob's Burgers. So like, there's this anger, but there's decision fatigue, but you don't know what you want, but you're stressed and your cortisol's high and now you're taking it out on everyone around you. They don't know what the hell they did wrong. They're like, you told me you didn't care. And so I made a decision and now you're mad at the decision, right? And so round and round they go. And if they would just get home and honestly, so when you ask the question of what I did, he passed. So the threat was gone. The retirement can happen, you know, whatever you go on vacation, whatever it might be. And then I had to take time for me. I literally cleared my schedule. And I think this is a huge challenge for high performers, leaders, and especially first responders, because they feel guilty. Right. I mean, to relate the guilt to them, they feel guilty if they're not out there serving. They feel guilty if their buddy died while they were on vacation and that was their partner and they weren't there to support them. They feel guilty about all these things. And the reality is that guilt will gnaw at you and chew at you until your adrenals are shot, your health is going through the tube, you're cranky at everybody around you, and you're not serving anyone well because you're not taking care of you.
And when you're in the middle of that, you don't even realize that this is happening to you.
Not at all. Conrad, I didn't know. And I live this and I teach this for a living. This is my career, right? And I thought, because I do so much work, I thought, I've got this. I'm still good. I've got it managed. Even my doctor, when I went into her this 3 days ago, she was like, this is the calmest I've ever seen you. And I was like, I didn't know I wasn't calm. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm high energy and all those things, but I didn't know I wasn't calm, kind of a deal. So It's really important we stop and we identify what are we going through. Stop worrying about everybody else just for 5 minutes a day. When you go to a stoplight, how do I feel about what's going on in my life? How do I feel about that event I have to go to tonight? How do I feel about going to Chick-fil-A by myself? How do I feel about going on vacation? Whatever it might be, checking in with us and not just operating here all the time, but getting quiet and just reflecting and doing some self-reflection is really critical.
You know, something I started doing this past month in January is getting up at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading the book, the 5 a.m. Club. Yeah. And so it's all about taking that first hour for me, just to stop, to breathe, to read, to meditate, to think.
Yes.
And I think we're so wired not to do that.
Yes.
Our lives are so big. I don't have time to spend thinking. I don't have time to spend, just sitting there quiet. Well, we're going to end up, where you were with all this stuff going on and cortisol levels through the roof if we don't stop on a regular basis to take care of. So I'm still working on the working out the kinks with that morning routine, but I love that time because it allows me just to kind of.
So here's one thing I'll say about that, Conrad, because this is where I even had the misconception I was taking care of me. I did that hour routine before. I've been doing that for years. So I thought I was taking care of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like what if I could articulate the differentiator, if I would have been doing this well, and this is great that you just started, it's like to take my wisdom from this that I wasn't doing. If I would have done this in a way where I wasn't worried about what do I want for my business? What do I want my relationships to look like? What do I want my family life to look like? What do I want this all to look like? If I would have taken the time and inwardly looked and said, what do I want for me today? I was listening. I love, it's a brain tap app. This would be phenomenal for anyone who does first responder or who is under high stress, leaders, executives. I tell people about this. I'm not affiliated in any way, although I probably would be filthy rich by now if I was, because I tell everyone. I think it's like $180 a year, and I literally would pay that much a month to have this app. It's just phenomenal. But as I was listening, it's kind of a combination of meditation, but it's guided meditation for people who have a hard time just sitting quiet sometimes. Neurolinguistic programming, binaural beats, which forces both sides of your brain to work together, which is a really big deal, especially under trauma. And I was listening to one of the things the other morning, and they're only like 22 minutes. That's what's so cool. They're short, you're in, you're out, which sometimes we're busy. We need that, and it said, what do you want to create today? And I literally stopped it and I was like, whoa, how many times have we heard that? And how many times do we instantly, subconsciously dismiss that notion? Because it hits two things. What do we want? And we're afraid to desire. We're afraid, if we feel selfish, if we want something, we feel narcissistic, we feel egotistical if we want things for us, right? Like, how dare we? That's so egocentric, all the things, whatever. And then the latter part of it saying, what do we want to create, gives us power back. Like, I get to create how my day goes today. What do I want to create? And I literally have sat and pondered that sentence and woke up to that sentence myself every morning, ever since I heard that the other day. And I was like, this is really profound. Because when we serve, and we're in the habit, as PTS or first responders are, we're giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. We're constantly taking care of everyone, including you go from like a shootout, like you're just getting shot at by 3 gangsters, I don't know, to the next call is like, my neighbor's dog won't stop barking. Right. And they're like, what the hell am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, so juggling this up, down, give. In the midst of all that up, down, we don't take the time to say, what do I want? So circling back to that first hour in the morning, that's where if people would focus on them and not feel guilty and create, even me days, my family and I have started to create me days. What do I want to do today? I get to do whatever I want today. Nobody gets to talk to me about it. Nobody gets to say, did you go to Chick-fil-A without me? And he was teasing, he's like, Mom, I go all the time without you. I just don't tell you. So he was just razzing me, but he knew it was a trigger point for me that he could manipulate emotionally a little bit. Kids are like little assassins, man. They can get right to the core of you. So anyway, reframing all of that first hour into us focused. What do I need for my health? What workout would I feel great doing? Is it yoga? Is it lifting? Is it running today? Is it sitting and meditating with ocean sounds in the background? Is that my workout today? That's going to fuel my body the best.
Wow. So there's a lot of places we can go with this.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we get into, I love what you're saying about we're just giving, and we feel guilty when we look inward.
Yes.
I think to break down that, how do we break through that? How do we break through that, that process of I'm just giving, but how do I now focus on me?
So I'm teaching myself this as I'm going through this. Okay. Cause I have said for years, you can only give or get what you have for yourself. I can only give authentic love to someone if I truly love myself. I can only really give true forgiveness to someone if I really have forgiven myself for all the things that I've done in my past, right? I can only give genuine happiness to other people when I'm happy with who I am. And and I heard it and I was raised with this. My mom would always say, you have to fill your own cup first. And even on the airplanes, they tell us put the mask on you first, first responder, take care of yourself first so that you can care for other people. And so somehow in this Western, because the Eastern world is not like this. They don't do this. They don't struggle. They take naps in the afternoon for 2 hours and they come back to work.
I want to go there.
Me too, right? Well, guess what? I mentally have been I am now operating this way. I'll never go back. I mean, I've given people that are really close to me permission. If you see me going back to that candle at 28 ends ever again, you have permission to elbow me. Just take me out and knock me out and say, remember that one time at band camp? But I think it's really just a mental recognition of really it hit me so hard when I realized how many emotions I had been suppressing these last 20 plus years, because I was really particularly the last 3.5, 4. But I was in such fight or flight all the time and had to be on guard and had to take care and do all the things that I really didn't have time to sit down and to self-reflect. So it's two components. Take the damn time, period. Force yourself to take the time. Hey, babe, every day, Friday at 5, when I get off 5 shifts, whatever, their shifts are different, but whatever your time is, I am taking 2 hours you're not going to see me home until 6:30. Are you cool with that? Can we make an agreement that I have this, she'll get her time, whatever it is, if you're married or not, whatever. Create and cultivate an environment. One of the things I used to do, I used to drive up at least once a month up to the river up here. No cell phone service, no coverage. Kids can't get nothing, right? I haven't done it so much since they haven't been engaged with their dad, because it's they didn't have any emergency contact really close. And so I'm going to go back to that. My oldest is 19. My second son's 17. We have amazing friends and family here. They can be on call if they need to. And I get to go designate in my calendar. No, if somebody called me to speak for Microsoft, I'd be like, sorry, I'm already scheduled that day for me. Non-negotiable. It's set in stone where we get to go take that time.
Wow. Putting things like that on your calendar is so important. I know I'm working on a book right now about that's based on my bike ride this past summer. And it's a personal development book about the things I learned. And so I literally had to put it on my calendar. So every Friday morning I write. I go to a local coffee shop, and that's my time to work on the book. And this week I have an appointment tomorrow morning down in DC, meeting with some Ukrainians. So I went and wrote yesterday. So, but I put it on my calendar. It's on the calendar. It's the only thing on the calendar on Fridays is that time because I knew if I didn't put it on the calendar, it's not a priority.
Yep.
And so I love that where you said, just take the time.
Yep. It's a non-negotiable, and you have to non-negotiate it with yourself. You get, oh, but I should, and I really want to, and that's why I say, have it be a do what you want day. It doesn't have to be out at the river. Like, it can be whatever you want. It can be a bike ride. It can be go skiing. It can be whatever you feel like. And this is the other thing I would really encourage people on that day. Don't decide ahead of time. I mean, maybe if you really want to go skiing and you got to plan it because you have to drive throughout, whatever, but wake up that morning, get quiet with yourself, because this is the key component that people miss. We've gotten so out of touch with being in touch with ourselves. Get back in touch with you. Sit quiet. What do I want to create today? And when you ask yourself that question, you give yourself permission to want, to desire, and you take your power back to create what you want for the day. Now you're I want to say stopless, unstoppable. It's like stopless is not a word, but now you're unstoppable, right? You can go do whatever, and you're fueling yourself the best way that your subconscious knows that you need that day. I think that's the other thing. We've mitigated and minimized our gut instinct. And a lot of PTSD responders actually stay in tune with that, even though they're under such high pressure. But they know when they walk into a room, they're like, something's off. They're in tune with that to some extent. Now take that in tuneness and apply it to yourself. Give yourself permission to apply it to you. What do you need this day? What do you want to go do today? Maybe it's sitting on the back porch for 4 hours, staring at the leaves rustling in the wind. And if that's what you want to do, it's freaking okay. You know,
I think the other thing, in you think about these things and thinking and looking at what high level athletes do. So high level athletes, they bring in coaches for everything. I mean, they have coaches for every part of their body, basically, because they want to be at peak performance. Right. And so they watch their diet, they watch all their intakes, and they manage that very carefully, because they know that if they want to win, if they want to help their team win, then they've got to be at peak performance. And no matter what we do, whether it's a podcaster like me or a filmmaker or a first responder, you want to operate at peak performance. And so if we're not taking care of our body in that way, or our mind in that way, our lives in that way, we can't give the time that we are giving. We can't be at our best, so that the people we're serving won't get our best.
Yes, absolutely. And I absolutely agree with you. However, I think the gap is so many people don't either think they deserve to operate at their best, or they don't think it's important to operate at their best, right? So they really, it's okay to go drinking 3 nights a week. It's okay to eat that McDonald's. It's okay. Like the way that I liken this to people, because I work with high performers, executives, super high level executives that are operating at their best. And I was like, would you most of them have nice cars, right? Sure. Well, I mean, we've got Porsches, Maseratis, Lamborghinis, Ferraris. And when I discover what they're driving, I'm like, would you go put Walmart regular fuel in that vehicle? And they're like, hell no. Not a chance, right? Like they won't even let you breathe on that car without, you know what I mean? Like they're so protective of this material thing. Yet they just dined at McDonald's because they were out of time. Or the famous one, this one kills me, when executives are like, I don't have time to take care of myself. And I'm like, what? Holy crap. Like, this is so backward. And they really believe this. And so there's and I don't want to get into the whole religious shtick or like whatever, but there's the emotional scale, right? Everything's energy. I don't understand it. You put this under a microscope and the friggin' thing moves way above my pay grade. I don't get it. Okay. But quantum physics says that everything's energy, which includes emotions. So there's Dr. Hawkins has done, it's not the other Hawkins, right? The Big Bang guy or whatever, but this is it. And the book is Power versus Force. And they've studied your emotional scale, basically, because they've measured the megahertz and the vibration of the emotions that we carry. Now, this is why also with first responders, generally speaking, I think, correct me if I'm wrong if you know this statistic, but I heard once along the line, after they retire, they have like a 5-year shelf life where they'll end up dying. Is that?
Well, the average age of a law enforcement retirement is 62. That's also the average age of death.
See? Holy crap. So it's zero.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're a first responder, you have to hear me right now. Or if you operate under high stress, I don't care who you are, right? Anybody who operates under high stress, you have to hear me. And this is why, Conrad, this was a trigger point for me when I realized, oh shit, I'm the only surviving parent. I was like, I can't ignore this anymore. And my health became ultimate priority here. What do I have to do? And that's why I slowed down so much. Okay. You've got to hear me. Our body keeps a freaking score. Every emotion, so this emotional scale I'm talking about, they operate at different vibrations, right? The ones that are the worst, and this is where I was going with religion, because oftentimes some religions, not all, like I don't want to put a blanket here, but oftentimes they operate out of shame and guilt. They guilt and shame you, guilt and shame you, guilt and shame you. Well, on the scale of 0 to 1,000, guess what is the closest to death? Death is 0, no vibration, no energy. The life force is gone. It's 0. What do you think is the closest to death? I mean, take a stab at it, right? Like,
I don't know.
Shame and guilt.
Oh, yeah.
Shame is at 20.
Wow.
Guilt is at 40. I mean, this is how depth. So then you get into, and again, I don't want to get into a controversial conversation, but it's like, you've got first responders who maybe you aren't ethical, or maybe you did some things and maybe you, or hell, maybe you did the right thing, but the world is shunning you for what you did. That's even worse in my opinion. Or you go into a restaurant and your sandwich is spit in because they disrespect you, which is a whole other freaking conversation that infuriates me. But you've got all this stuff that's not just getting thrown at you in your workplace. You can't go to a restaurant without getting judged. You can't go home without getting, not being understood. Maybe, I don't want to say maybe judged, but not being understood a lot of the time. So you're constantly feeling the shame, guilt. Well, that affects our health. So there's these internal, and I call these like the silent killers. Emotions are the silent killer. They're now linking cancer to be completely related to emotions, undealt with emotions. And this is where, for me, it was like a massive warning, not just stop sign. It was like a warning, make a U-turn. You're the last surviving parent. You have 4 boys. You have got to take care of your health and slow down and take care of them. Because I don't want to retire at 62 and die at 62, right? Yeah. I want to be around for them.
Yeah. Wow. So what are you doing now day to day that is moving you in the direction that you want to go?
Yeah. So I shared with you earlier, I'm very slowly easing back into work, if you will. I'm extraordinarily selective about the clients I take on. And this is like anyone, like when you're first early starting, you're like, you're hungry, you'll take on whatever. Sure. In fact, I walked away, there's been a few others, but a huge one last year that I walked away from. And if I told you the details of who it was and what it could have done for my career and all the things, you would be like, what? And it's not even an option. It's like, you are not healthy. And I'm not going to help a burning ship. Like, you're a sinking ship. I don't have the energy. I'd rather go take on 3 other clients that are eager, excited, that the team wants this training, where we can get through 3 days worth of training in a day and a half because they're so hungry, versus just fighting and fighting and fighting with your team because they are just stopgap. They don't want to be open to anything new. Right. And so I'm extraordinarily critical about that. Like I said, we started the me days, whatever we get to do, whatever we want to do, me day. Nobody gets to demand anything of me. And we all support each other in that. My boys and I have an incredibly cool relationship, and they're super supportive. I could not do what I do without them. And so, but it's a team effort. They get their day, I get my day, and everybody supports everybody else having their day, kind of a deal. And the quiet, what I perceived as, so I'll give this, I completely took off January. I took off quite a bit November, December, but I was still having to manage, and I completely took off January. And I think this is what happens when we back off and we're in alignment with who we are. We're checked back in. I had to reconfigure my purpose of my work, right? Like, why am I really doing this? And it really caused me to slow down. I think this is a really important question for first responders to ask. Why are you really doing this? Are you doing this just because you are supposed to? Your parents told you? You feel like you're stuck? Like, when you get back in tune with why I'm doing this, like I was having a conversation with a good friend, and he's like, well, it was on the table even with my kids, where I was like, we're going to start businesses with them, and I'm going to get them set up in a way, and maybe I just don't do this anymore. And as I kept talking about that, I was like, I can't not do this. I can't not do what I do. It's like we can't not take what we know and not gift the world with what we know. So at the end of the day, getting back in alignment and taking that time to figure out, I do what I do because I love seeing this transformation in people and getting people to be able to see on the other side. Life can be fantastic. I can have it all. And not the material things, right? Like a lot of the times the executives, especially the individuals that I coach, they've got it all. They've got the house, the car, the wife, the kids, the private schools, the college set up for them, and they've got it all. And they're empty inside. Well, it's because they are not taking care of them.
Yeah. So why is it so hard for a lot of us, myself included, to say no?
The first thing that comes up for me, because I used to be this way and I'm so not now. I'm like, nope. I just started a book. It's The Power of Expertise, the Business of Expertise. The Business of Expertise, because it says expert and then "ese" on like a second line. My son was like, what is ISE? And I was like, no, it's expertise. It was really cute. But he actually started the book with the forward letter. And it was from a good friend of his who said, replied back. He had asked him to do the forward, and he replied back and he said, I'm sorry, I can't. And it has nothing to do with you personally, but I've made a decision to solely focus on this one thing. And he used that as the forward letter because he was like, this is the power of when we say no. So I recently read the book, 10X is Easier Than 2X. It's Dan Kennedy, but somebody else wrote it. So there's a ghostwriter on there, Hardy, maybe, I think. That book is phenomenal. In fact, Dan Hardy puts 180 days of personal time on his calendar every year before he even starts the year. Him and his wife sit down and they plan 180. That's half the year. Yeah. That's half the year. Like that's 2 out of 4 weeks. I mean, you think about that. And the whole premise is the brilliant entrepreneurs, the brilliant Bezos, Microsoft, like all those guys, they take the time, go undisturbed. They read books. They pour back into themselves. They get quiet. They get, to me, connected to higher conscious, whether if you want a God, universe, source, I don't care what people call it, like whatever works for you, right? You get reconnected to that because I do believe we're all connected. I don't care what you think. Like we're all connected. We are connected. We have access to this powerful source. And if we can check into that and find out where we're supposed to go, that guides us into the next steps. It guides us in where we should be going. I
have a friend who talks about this a lot. He says that you don't have to respond to every text message or every email immediately.
Nope. I set up blocks. In fact, I very much control the avenues of which you have to contact me in. Like my people who majority of my clients, everything goes through Voxer. And I do Voxer because it's efficient for me. I can listen on 2 or 3x speed while I'm on a walk because I operate best when I'm walking. I think I do my best thinking. That's one of the things for me that I've learned about me. So I'll do my coaching calls on a walk. And I had this is so funny, this last summer. It was the first one that ever responded. She was all offended. She was like, are you at a walk? And like, she was all put out and I was like, yes, I am. And I said, if you want the best of me, you want me to be at a walk, sweetie. And she said, well, shouldn't you be taking notes or, like putting down and I was like, when I'm walking, when we're using both sides of our brain and our brain's fully engaged and we're out in nature and we're getting vitamin D, that is far more effective than taking notes, right? Like this, and I'll go home and I'll take notes. I mean, notes don't escape me, or I'll do a voice note about them, just to keep me reminded of some of the details. But when we put ourselves in those situations and we set those boundaries and we set those expectations with people, I've got a really good friend from Italy. She constantly wants to do video calls. And I just tell her, no, I'm sorry. Like today I can, right now I can't. Like this is not going to. And when here's the beauty of this that I think people are missing. People perceive boundaries as an opportunity for conflict. The reason it's an opportunity for conflict is because you've trained everyone around you to use and abuse you. You've trained them how to treat you. We teach other people how to treat us. When we stand firm in our confidence and we say, yeah, that doesn't work for me, but I could do it on this day. Like I said, there's days I don't care who calls me to have me go speak. I ain't doing it. It's just not an option. I'm not going to rearrange my schedule for it. I'm the most important, because if I'm not operating out of my best, you get subpar of me. If I didn't get good sleep last night, Conrad, if I didn't get up and do my morning routine, if I didn't get my quiet time this morning and I didn't get my workout in this morning, I would not be able to come here and give you my best. My heart's desire is that's the alarm I shut off. At 11:11 every day, I have a alarm that goes off that says, do it like it's your last shot to help someone.
Wow.
And that's how I get to live my life. And that statement has come out of the last 30 days of me being quiet, where really, what do I want to do? Considering hanging my business up, which is like foolishness because it's radically like disrupted the leadership industry. But I was so tired. It was like, I just can't do what I'm doing anymore. Didn't know the solution. When you get quiet and I got back to my purpose, I get to be here today and I get to give you everything I got because I took care of me. If I'm hungover, if I got crappy sleep, if I ate donuts for breakfast, if I did all this crap, you're getting some part of me and we've just wasted everyone's time. I'm just not interested in a life like that.
Wow, I love that. Do it. So say it again. Do it like it's you.
Do it as if it's the last shot to help someone.
Wow. That's kind of like, okay, if this is your last day, what would you do?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I'm telling you, and first, you guys get it. Like first responders, you see how unexpected life can end. It can end like that. So go home, even though your cortisol is high. The best gift you could give your family is saying, hey, babe, I know you've got 3 little kids at home and you've been home all day. Can we hire for even an hour that you could get a babysitter from that 5 to 6 window? And I'm just throwing times out. You get an hour, 5 to 6 to debrief. I don't come home. I get off at 5. I ain't coming home till 6. I'm going to go drive around. I'm going to go sit by the river. I'm going to go for whatever I want to do. And we're going to debrief and we're going to come home like it's our last night to be together. And we're going to really pour into our family. And when we start shifting that perspective of what do I want to create when I walk through this door? What do I want to create when I go serve this person who's dying on the roadside? What do I want to create when I pull this guy over and he could have a gun, or it could be a mom that like got a call that her son is in the hospital. Who knows what it'll be? Or the neighbor next door of the dog barking, right? Who do I want to show up as? What do I want to create in all of these circumstances? Do I want to create a healthy day for me? Do I want my blood sugar to be up and down if I eat like crap? Or do I want to create stability, my brain being fed, my body being fueled like a Porsche, like it should be? Because that kind of circles back to what we were talking about before of why don't people care for themselves? A lot of times you don't think you're worthy. So one of the biggest, most important things, and I would really encourage all you guys to do this who's listening, go through your life, write down every person you need to forgive, and most importantly, everything you need to forgive yourself for. We do not forgive ourselves. We hold on to this, and this is that guilt and shame. It's just constantly gnawing at us. And we'll snap at someone over something that they did that reminded us of our guilt and shame because we did that once, because we haven't dealt with it. When you write all this stuff down, I do this with my corporate teams, like especially when we do retreats. We'll do this and we'll go out to a fire pit and burn it, or like in hotel rooms. If we're at a conference room, we can't go burn it. We put it in a bowl of water. We mesh them all up together. We do paper mache and it dissolves and we flush it down the toilet. You know what I mean? Like, because once you get rid of it, I did this with my kids the first of the year this year. I had my kids do this. It's gone. We're done. We're not thinking about that anymore. I've forgiven myself. And then give yourself permission to actually let it go. Stop ruminating about it. Stop thinking about it. Every time it comes back up, just say, you know what? I've forgiven myself for that. I'm moving on. I've forgiven myself for that. I'm moving on. And keep reminding yourself that that's the past. I get to create what I want to be moving forward.
Wow. And it takes time sometimes to do that because we come with all this baggage, right? How we've been raised, how we've been taught, our experiences. We've come with all this stuff. So that takes some time. I remember back 2 years ago when we had our film premiere down in Texas, and we took all the major characters in my film out to an equine center to do some equine therapy. And it was an amazing experience. And part of that experience, they had to write some things on a piece of paper, and they did that. Then we burned them. And it was such a powerful moment for everyone. It's like, okay, I'm going to let this go.
It is. And it's a finale. Like, part of it is you have to decide, I'm making a decision to let this go. The brain is a goal achieving machine only when emotions are involved. And I get really frustrated with like the whole secret movement and this manifest and these mantras, like they're bullshit. Can I just be honest? It's bullshit. If manifesting worked, I would have $10 million at my doorstep in an hour. Okay. Like that, it's not, I mean, I don't want to say manifesting, like, but the mantras, right? When we just say like, you know, I'm going to have $10 million by next week. Okay. Well, you have to implement action. You have to have emotion behind it. what people don't realize is when we tie emotion to it, because the brain doesn't know the difference. This is a crazy part about it. The brain doesn't, I shouldn't say the brain doesn't know the difference. The brain doesn't care if it's a good or a bad outcome. You can berate yourself with negative thoughts, negative beliefs. And this is a whole thing that I teach with corporate, where we've got a belief system, which is our subconscious. But the quickest way to access what's really in there, because we only use 5% of our frontal lobe. Like the frontal lobe is like 5% of our brain. That's what we really use on the daily. 95% is subconscious, and exactly what you were saying, Conrad. It's social conditioning, parental conditioning, school conditioning, religious conditioning. So you couple those four things with your life experiences now, that becomes the lens with which you look through. So you and I, even if we were identical twins raised in the same home, we don't have the same glasses that we're looking through. It's very different. We perceive, they've done studies with like twins where they'll take them to an ocean for the first time, same parents, same home, all the same things, same genes, identical twins. They go to the ocean. One's terrified. One could not be happier and is jumping in with joy and diving right into the water and having a blast, right? Why? Why does that happen? Well, when we make meaning about events that happen in our life, now we've attached emotion to it and we've decided whether it's good or bad. And we've decided based on that conditioning, based on our life experiences, is this a good or a bad thing? Like let's just take women in America, for instance, right? Like, or even different regions like France or wherever. One of my girlfriends, she's Indian. She was told she's a brown cow when she was growing up. They moved into Canada, and so she wasn't normal there, right? And so she's told she's a brown cow. So she always struggled. She's curvy, she's beautiful, she's got a body that I'm like, she could gain 100 pounds and still have that beautiful body. You know what I mean? I gained like 3, and it's all in my gut. Like, I mean, I just look like a apple on toothpicks. You know what I mean? So she's got this beautiful figure, whereas like in America, we want tall, thin, long legs, big, but you know, like all the things, whatever it might be, our culture, our conditioning has defined what beauty is. We're both just as beautiful, right? Like we're both just as beautiful in the right person's eyes. But the way that the conditioning has happened, she's questioned her beauty. I've spent too many years questioning mine. You know what I mean? And it's all based on what we've been told we should be. When we remove and we get quiet and say, I don't give a shit what y'all told me I should be. Who am I? Am I happy with these long ass legs? Yes, I am. Like, I mean, my neighbor called me high pockets. You know what I mean? Like, so I was raised with that, and it wasn't, but I decided if it was a good or a bad thing. So when we make a decision, same thing with the brain, and then we tie emotion to it as if it's already happened, now the brain will start achieving that thing.
Wow. There's a lot to work on for all of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's why a lot of people don't do this work, Conrad. That's precisely why they feel like it's too, and that's the importance of having someone to guide you through it, where there is a system, there is a process, you can get through it. It's not painless, right? Because we are dealing with our pain. Sure. You talk about all the baggage we bring to the table. Well, when I do my corporate speaking engagements or any kind of speaking engagement from stage, I literally bring a bag and I pull out this like blanket. And I'm like, I had this blanket of shame over divorce, and I pull out the wine bottle, and I was like, he was addicted to pornography. And so that made me feel less than. So to drown that pain out, I would drink a bottle of wine or 5 a night in the closet after the kids went to bed and cry into a pillow so they wouldn't hear me. And I had to look perfect. So then I pull out a yoga mat. It's like these visuals of all the shit we're all carrying around. Like, and it's not my bag. Like what's in my bag might be radically different, but the reality is we all have a bag and nobody's teaching you how to unpack it. And that's what my mission is to teach people how to unpack their bag.
Well, you're doing great work, and I'm sure you're impacting a lot of people that will be better off because they spent time with you. And I'm better off for spending time with you today. It's just, you've motivated me to do the things that I need to do to get to the next step of where I want to go. And so, and I think everyone listening to this and watching this will feel the same. So thank you.
Yeah,
so finally, what's one step someone can take if they're just in this place where they're just, where you were? What's the first step that they can take to get to where they want to go?
Well, and I won't even say where I've been the last few months because I'm telling you, this is 20 years in of this work. You know what I mean? And that's why I love to give it, because when I figure out the key, I'm like, oh, I get to collapse time for you. You don't have to spend 20 years doing this. You know what I mean? Like, let me help you collapse time. One of the first things people can do that radically shifts their mindset, the way that they think, and starts to get them used to the idea of giving themselves permission to be a little egocentric, if we will. We're just going to say turned inward, self-focused in a good way, in a healthy way, in a I get to give a better me to you tomorrow way instead of a narcissistic way. Every night and I have all my clients start here. Every night before you go to bed, write down 3 wins that you had for the day. Just 3, right? And it could be, I have a history of getting out of bed. I hate getting out of bed in the morning, but this morning I did 3, 2, 1 launch and I got out when I said launch, right? It could be, I went to the gym and I did 1 extra set or 1 extra rep on each set. I smiled at the person because normally I'm grumpy and I don't engage with the grocery clerk. Whatever a win is for you. People are always like, well, is this a win? And I was like, oh, is that something you did yesterday that you've normally done before? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then it's a win. Like, this is a win. You've chosen to do something. You actually followed through on your action. So when you write those down, there is a significance to writing. Our brain, it locks and loads it more into our subconscious. When you do this right before you go to bed, you are now setting the stage for your brain to say, I'm actually pretty awesome. Instead of waking up at 2 a.m., anybody know like that 2 a.m. voice, right? That wakes you up. It never wakes you up to say, you're pretty awesome. It wakes you up to say, you didn't get this. You should have said this way. If you would have done this with that person at that call, it might have ended differently, and just berates you, right? When you set the stage, doesn't mean this is going to go away at 2 a.m. because again, this takes time. People think, back to your point of this takes time to do. If I've been sitting on the couch eating McDonald's and donuts for the last 3 years, and you ask me to go run a marathon tomorrow, I can't do it, right? Our brain is a muscle. We've got to train it every single day, every opportunity we get. Statistically, depending on the study you look at, 70 to 80% of our thoughts are negative. 90 to 95% of those are on repeat every freaking day. Unless we take control, right? Statistically speaking, we're sick, fat, and nearly dead. As Americans, especially, we're eating a sad diet. We're doing all the things unless we take action and do something. So your brain's no different. You have to take action. So closing your day down with your 3 wins, writing them down. The other cool thing about this, we call this our book of rocks. When you're struggling and you're just feeling like I'm a piece of crap, I can't do anything right. Guess what? You now have a book of evidence of all the things that you've been able to do, that you get to go back and gets to be a resource to remind you of really who you are, right? It really gets to remind you of who you are. So you do that at night. And then in the morning, before, you know, that moment when you're awake, but you're still kind of paralyzed, right? Like you're aware and you haven't really checked into what do I have to do today? You're just there and you're just like, you're cognizant that your brain is in it's the theta state. It's a really cool state. That's the best state to rewire your brain because we're trying to rewire those beliefs, right? Because the thoughts are the indication of what are in your beliefs. And if 70 to 80% of your thoughts are negative, 70 to 80% of your beliefs are negative about you, especially, right? So when you're in that state, that's your best opportunity to rewire that. When you wake up, literally go through 3 gratefuls. I'm so grateful for these silk sheets. I'm so grateful the sun is shining today. And you can't just say it like, oh, cool, I got a silk pillowcase. Yay, right? Like you have to feel it, like touch the pillowcase. If you're grateful for your spouse, like do this with your spouse. If you're freaking married, I highly encourage you to do both these exercises with your spouse. Just do that for 60 days, 66 days is when you really change a habit and report back to me and tell me how much your relationship has changed, right? Like it will radically change the connection and the engagement that you have with each other. But if you do this in the morning, you just reach over and you touch your wife, in your case, Conrad, and you just grab her hand and even if you're just saying in your head, I'm so grateful for what she did for me yesterday, for what she's done for me for the last couple of decades, like whatever it might be, but you're feeling it. Now this sets the tone and the stage for your brain. You are creating and you are setting the stage for how you want to go to sleep and how you want to wake up. The 2 most important times of your day for your subconscious, for sleep time, and your conscious as you enter your day. And I like to take control of my day instead of let my day control me, right? So Those are 2 things I always have people start out with must.
Well, there you go, folks. You have your assignment.
Yeah.
And if you think 60 days is too much, just do it once.
Yes.
Just do it once.
True.
Just chunk it out. I was talking about that today in my little short that I put. I said, we just need to chunk out our big projects into little manageable pieces. So do it once, and then tomorrow morning do it once more.
Yes.
And pretty soon you'll be at 60 days and it'll be something you just automatically do. That's great advice. Thank you so much for that. And just for all the work that you do. I can't wait to sometime meet you in person and to go have a cup of coffee together and see what we can do to move the world forward to a better place.
Yes, so. I love it. Conrad, I can't thank you enough for having me. I so appreciate you. As always, I respect the crap out of you. Love the work that you're doing, and I'm very honored to be able to walk this life with you. And like we said, we just get to change the world one step at a time.
Thanks, Brenda, for joining me today on the podcast. I'm really glad we were able to get you on the program, and I appreciate what you're doing so very much. Thanks again for listening and for watching. And remember, you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where to turn, you can dial 988 for help. I hope you have a great month of July. I'll be back in August with brand new content and interviews. Until then, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.